Hey guys, it's Rufus, and when Buck lost his nades a while back, people were understandably mad, but the change, in my opinion, was the easiest fix to make Buck and Sledge more comparable. In the past, Buck was simply better and more versatile than Sledge in nearly every way, with the exception of, getting things like castle barricades or maestro cams, but that's kind of a niche ability for Sledge to have. It doesn't come into use like every single round. The reason Buck's pick rate has dropped so much isn't because he doesn't have frags. And I know it seems that way, but the reason he's not getting picked nearly as much is because he's being used for his actual use much more often, and that is going below. And now going below is something you can do on pretty much every map, but most people choose not to because it's difficult to take gunfights from below. And most of the time, if you want to clear utility from below, you can just use IQ or explosives. But Buck's main purpose now is to prevent the defenders from playing certain positions. And for example, on border, if you wanted to stop someone from playing half wall, you're attacking armory, right? You breach below and it forces them out of that position. They have to move, because obviously they can't sit at half wall anymore. And so even if you don't get a kill from that, your positioning is better and it's easier to push into that armory breach without someone playing at that half wall. And so just because Buck doesn't have nades doesn't mean you shouldn't use him for vertical play. His gadget has more ammo, is significantly faster, much safer, and more versatile. In competitive Siege, you need a minimum of 2 sets of explosives. That's kind of my rule, but if you have, say, a Zofia and a Maverick on your team, bringing a Buck could be considered the better choice since your team will need the flashes for burning. And so breaching from below is extremely effective in clearing positions, especially on coastline. If you've ever played billiards, it is very difficult when Buck is breaching below you, but you can't really move out because you'll get shot from billiards window or maybe like VIP or wherever. But on Cafe, cocktail takes have been becoming more popular as it's a way to almost completely disregard defender utility. And also the fact that the second floor of Cafe generally has little to no roam presence makes this much easier to perform. And you might not know what a cocktail take is, but on Cafe, cocktail take is on the top floor. It's when you, instead of taking bar, trying to plant there and pushing from cigar side, you push below site, you breach below cocktail, and you rappel on the windows, and you try to execute on the site that way. It's becoming more popular, it can be pretty effective, and with Buck especially, it's super easy to perform because you just have so much soft destruction that you can do. However, some of you are probably thinking, if you're gonna roam clear, below site and breach under site, why don't the defenders just roam below? And that's a good point, they can, but putting 2 people off site for a roam on bar is very difficult when you have so much you have to do on the top floor. Site is so big, and so when you put 2 people below site for a roam, it really makes site vulnerable to a rush, as there's just so much control that has to be covered by 3 people. And so generally, if you want to have a downstairs roam, usually you'd have it with someone playing below site and then someone on white stairs to come support if they need to. But enough talking about that cocktail take. Anyway, my last point is that Buck has a lot more possibilities than Sledge. You can open up so many angles with Buck that's just impossible with Sledge, and I'm going to be showing them on the screen here, but it's very common to see a lot of these angles made with Buck, or at least it used to be. And so overall, Buck is in a fine place right now. There's not really anything wrong with him, and I don't really see why he should get his frags back. I personally enjoy the difference between Buck and Sledge, and while the difference isn't super large and Sledge is brought significantly more often now, not every operator needs to have a balanced pick rate or to be perfect. Different operators have different uses, and that's okay. So overall, Buck is simply just brought for different situations and more often purely brought for destruction from below. And so it's for that reason primarily that Buck is being brought a lot less in this current meta. However, if you already have enough explosives and actually need more flashes for burning, I would consider Buck the better choice, for the reason that Buck's ability is simply just better in almost every way. And so if you already have the explosives you need, there's really no point in bringing Sledge over Buck. And you guys can be like, oh, but Sledge has the SMG-11 and you can bring castle barricades and monster cams, but I don't really give a shit. The amount of times that comes in handy is not super often. I mean, well, it happens, but it's not something you can rely on, especially not with maestro cams. Castle barricades maybe, but in the majority of situations, Sledge isn't going to come up to a castle barricade anyway. If one of his teammates sees it, they're going to destroy it first, because they can't waste 20 to 30 seconds having Sledge rotate over and destroy a castle barricade. That's all to say for this video, and if you learned something, give the video a like, and if you want to see more content like this, then subscribe. Toodles.